and there was a bullet hole through the living room floor, wood floor. It was very small. All you could see was like a piece of wood kind of jutted up.
Welcome to the Levelin Up podcast. I'm here with my good friend Martin Potter. He's also an amazing real estate investor, someone that understands the ins and outs of real estate and how to stop just striving in business, but start to thrive. And this idea of thriving is something that we're going to explore today. We're going to go through his experience, his stories, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So, Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself, your backstory, and then we're going to dive right into how we can thrive in business, not just strive.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start. I dropped out of college.
Like you do.
I'll start there. That's a pretty good start, right?
That's a great start. Like now I need to figure out why is that? Why'd you drop out of college?
Yeah. So I went to college for computer engineering, and I realized about a year in that it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, and it was more of a hobby than anything else. And I didn't want to be stuck behind a desk for 30 years. It just sounded miserable. And, 9 times out of 10, that's the kind of job you get is some cubicle or something along those lines. And if you're real lucky, you might have a travel job. But
Yeah.
even then, that didn't sound great to me either. And so I don't know, there was just something pulling me. And I decided that there are a lot of examples in this world of people who were very successful without going to college. Some of them didn't go to high school.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, if they can do it, I know I can figure it out. A lot of them came from nothing as well. And, I didn't grow up with money. So I figured, why not? I was going to school for everyone but myself, my family and parents and whoever else. And I just decided, you know what, it's not their life. It's my life. I got to figure it out and be happy on my own. So I dropped out, made that hard decision. And this was in Kansas where I used to live. And, Kansas State University is where I went. And I just decided to move west. And the next biggest city that there was available for opportunity was Denver, Colorado. And I came and checked it out and loved it and moved out here in 2012. And so, yeah, I've been here for a while now. And I joined Renatus when I was 25. So I did a few piddly things for a few years when I first moved to Denver, and nothing great, just crappy jobs and whatever I could do basically to live paycheck to paycheck. And I finally became a real estate agent after having a really intense sales job, like 100% commission-based sales, like real sales. Like if you don't sell, you don't make money. And so that really mentally got me, I think, where I needed to be in order to take on something like real estate and then eventually Renatus. So I'm really grateful for that experience. It was tough. I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I became a realtor. I did that for about a year, maybe. I think I did one deal as a real estate agent, and I found Renatus by networking. And when I found the group, I was like, interesting. I kind of it's funny, I had an ulterior motive. I came to the meeting that I was invited to, the initial Renatus meeting. I didn't know anything about it. I was very green and naive, I suppose. And I just thought, oh, I'll meet a bunch of successful real estate investors, and then they'll let me represent them as a real estate agent. Right. So I'm like, cool, I'll go down and, network with a whole bunch of bigwig guys. And well, there were a couple of guys that were doing some stuff when I went to the meeting, but the main thing was what they were talking about. I was kind of blown away. I was like, wow, this is a side of real estate that I had no idea. This is the other side to the coin of real estate. I had always been, most people in the world know about being a real estate agent and kind of how that works. And when you tell them real estate investing, they're like, well, I don't know what that is. What does that mean? Because it can mean so many things.
Oh yeah.
And so, they were like, you don't need a license. Learn how to become a real estate investor for yourself, a business owner, whatever strategies you want to pursue, raise private money. You don't even have to use your own money to buy property. I'm like, what? I kind of thought it was a scam, right? It sketched me out. And so I just kept coming around because their meetings were free, and why not? I started getting used to getting to know and getting used to some of the people involved because I would see them consistently, including Michael Huggins. That was when he first came to Denver and decided to start a group here in Denver.
Yeah.
And after like, I don't even know, probably 8 weeks of coming around like every week, I finally made the decision. I had no money, so I used a credit card. I was able to get a 0% interest credit card for I think 18 months and put my education on that and started rolling. I got my first deal in, I think it took me 8 months after I got my education to get my first deal. It was a fix and flip. I started doing fix and flips, just one or two at a time for the first few years. And that was great. I was really happy. Within about a year, I was able to quit my job. And, I had a low overhead, so it was easy for me to quit after making a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Um, and within that first year, I flipped two houses, and I made like 50 grand in profit. And I had never made that much money in a whole year easily. Because remember, I told you I had crappy jobs making 20 to 30K probably in poverty level.
Hmm.
And so it was really interesting. So I took the rest of that year off and kind of vacationed and traveled a bunch and did what I probably shouldn't have done, but I needed to do that I guess, as a release. And yeah, just kind of been rolling ever since. That was 8 years ago. I've done a lot of different strategies over the years. And the last few years, mainly since COVID, I sold my last flip in 2020. I thought the real estate market was going to crash like a lot of people. And so I just didn't want to get stuck in the middle of a deal if that were the case. And so I sold my last deal and I transitioned into a short-term rental business that I had been kind of messing with on the side. And I've just been rolling with that the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm up to, I think, 16 properties now that I manage / do rental arbitrage on or own. And yeah.
I love it. So you've had a diverse experience, like, no, like saying, I'm not going to keep going to college. I'm going to find my own way. And then once you found Renatus, after you've been doing this transactional side with the realtor idea, is, man, there is something here that's special. I think that, sharing your first $50,000 year, you're like, all right, I've made it. And then like, oh wait, I'm not done. I need to do this more. Like,
Yeah, you got to keep working. I found out. I
exactly.
found out you have to keep doing things in order for the money to come in.
Yeah, that's funny how it
Strange.
works, right?
Yeah.
You got to work
Um,
to have the money keep coming.
right, exactly. Real quick, somebody named Will said, "Where are you?" I'm not sure who they
Oh
were
yeah,
asking that. Were they asking me? I'm in Denver.
you're in Denver. I'm over here in Mount Pleasant, Utah, but I'm gonna be over in Grand Junction, Colorado, very very soon. So
Nice. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm on my back deck at home in Denver, if that answers your question, Will.
no worries. So let's dive in a little bit, because one of the things that I think is uniquely uh, cool about what your experience is you didn't just find one thing and say, oh, that's the only thing I'm going to do ever. You found fix and flip. You did those for a time, and then as the market shifted, you're like, oh, I need to shift.
Hmm.
You just hold on to it for dear life and just get dragged behind a boat. You're like, all right, what do I need to do to make that shift? And instead of just going into it blind, you're like, let's go and understand this process, talk to other people that are doing it. And now you're successfully doing a short-term rental arbitrage and management business. So go through and share with us a little bit how you have made these shifts in your business, because that's such an important thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's important to kind of roll with the times, and you know, I also kind of get complacent with certain things, and I just know myself in that way, and so I knew that it I knew that I needed to change it up a little, do
Yeah.
something different. And I'm not opposed to going back to doing flips and other strategies. I'm really grateful that Renatus teaches like all this stuff, because imagine if it was like most of the companies that are out there doing this kind of thing, most of them teach one or two strategies and that's it. And so if you only know how to make money in an up market, like, it's not great. Hold on a sec. Somebody's calling me from Massachusetts. This
From
is
Massachusetts.
probably, huh?
No, that's funny. No worries.
Hingham, Massachusetts. I'm not answering that. Okay. Um, so yeah, I just think it's important to have a lot of different tools in your tool belt, so to speak. A lot of different strategies depending on what's happening in the market. And Renatus is great. I mean, any type of strategy that I'm interested in pursuing, and based on whatever market I'm in, whether it's up or down or just flat, there's a strategy that I can just pop into my education and just start learning it.
Yeah.
To me,
I,
that's wild. Like, and the fact that I have access to it whenever I want, and I've had access to it for the last 8 years, like, that's crazy to me. Like, nobody does that.
right.
So that's really cool. And also, just to play devil's advocate, when I first joined Renatus, it was a big decision for me because it cost money, right? And I didn't have any money. And so I'm like, if I'm going to make this decision, not only do I need, good examples, which I found in Michael Huggins and some other people here locally, but also if this education goes away tomorrow, like right after I buy it, what's going to happen? Because this company, I'm not I'm not literally a part of this company in terms of I'm not in control of what's happening to this company, right? We're all students of this company that provides education. And so I'm always thinking like worst case scenario, they go down tomorrow. It just goes under. It happens. Businesses go out of business. Luckily, that's not the case in any regard. It's the opposite, and if anything. But I'm always thinking like, okay, if it goes away, what do I gather from it? How do I move on from it? And what's great is the education that you learn, like everything that you learn, that can't get taken away from you, buddy.
No.
Like that's awesome. And so as soon as you can learn that information and retain it and use it in some way or another, it's stuck with you. It's in you forever, which is so cool because that can't get taken away. So even if the company does go down tomorrow, God forbid, right? I'm good. Like I know what I'm doing. I have strategies in place. Like I have enough knowledge around a lot of different types of real estate strategies at this point. So I'm just really grateful about that. And also like just being able to sort of impress that upon other people that I meet that are, in earlier stages of where I was is really helpful too. I don't necessarily need Renatus's education to help somebody get started either, which is great. Of course, I always plug people into it because it's still there, but I'm just always like thinking, well, if this goes down, like, how am I going to move forward, without that awesome opportunity there?
Yeah. One of the things I love about what you brought up is freedom is options. Freedom is having the ability to say, I've got multiple choices here, and this is what I choose. And one of the things I love about our education platform, Notice, is that if the current way that you are doing business needs to shift slightly, you can go watch the classes, you can talk to the people that are doing the strategy, and then you
Yep.
can make a slight adjustment. And I think that's something you've done beautifully in your business. And that all of us, like even recently, I had to shift in my business from doing arbitrage to switching to management because the numbers, and that's just the way that our market shifted here in Utah. But having that as an option, having that ability to say, well, I can provide the exact same type of service, but I can have significantly less risk doing the management element. It was a huge discovery for me. And I didn't discover that on my own. With people in the community, what are you guys doing? How are you providing value for each other now? And as you shift, as you talk with other people, like your relationship balance goes up, your knowledge balance goes up, and you can never have your knowledge balance go down after you've learned something. So I think that's something that's really nice about what you brought up too. Even if the company left tomorrow, you still have your relationships, you still have your experiences, you still have
Yep.
what you have retained and learned. So very, very valuable.
And
So
that goes just exactly with that. Everybody's always saying like, you know, create value for yourself, like make yourself valuable, like personal education, personal development. People talk about all that stuff. And it's exactly in line with what you were just saying and what I was saying is like, once you get that information, once you create yourself and make yourself more valuable just in the marketplace and learn more things and go through it's so great because none of that can be taken away from you ever.
and
It's just added on.
the thing that I think is really helpful, I heard Bob Snyder say about this, you want to have specialized skills. Specialized knowledge to develop specialized skills. And as we consistently develop those skills, we become more valuable. And as we're more valuable in the marketplace, our value goes up because we have more valuable questions and problems that we can solve and answer.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, what in your experience has been like the key factor in transitioning from striving, like what you were doing when you were a realtor, to thriving in business?
I mean, I would say like if I had to pick one thing that I do now as opposed to then, learning how to raise private capital has been a game changer. I mean, if you don't know how to raise private capital currently, you should be pursuing that skill,
Yeah.
in my opinion, like first and foremost, fleshing that out. learning how to do it, learning how to have conversations, learning how to incentivize somebody when you're talking to them on why they should invest with you, or why you should partner together, or however you're structuring the deal. That's the other cool thing. There's so many ways you can structure buying property, doing real estate deals, doing business in general with other people. You can do debt investments, you can do equity investments, you can do a debt equity blend where you borrow money and they're part of your company. Like, there's a lot of ways to incentivize somebody to lend money to you or put money into your partnership, so that you can get stuff done. It's awesome. I've never spent any of my own money to do deals, and I think I counted. It's not like super high, but I've counted. I think I've raised like $1.7 million over the last couple of years to do real estate deals with.
And you think about how freeing that is, because it's how many conversations have you had? How many people have you been able to provide value for? Not how much money have I socked away?
Yeah.
Totally different mindset. Like, if you think about someone that has been a blue collar worker before, you're like, well, 1.7 million, that's more than if I stayed at my own job and I didn't even use any of the money that I would make in 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
You think about what you were able to do in the last 8 years, being able to raise that money, and they were happy to do it because you provided them a valuable service, you provided them equity, or you provided them profit. And when we start to shift our mindset from how do I get to how do I give, how do I add value, how do I solve more valuable problems and increase my valuable skill sets, the game is totally changed. So tell us a little bit about your process of becoming who you've become to be able to raise 1.7+ million dollars. What was that process like?
Yeah. Uh, the, the process has been interesting. A lot of ups and downs over the years, the first several, especially. Renatus did it for me, man. I mean, the year that I joined, I was working part-time at a pizza delivery place while I had my real estate license still, right? Remember, I said I think I did one deal before I found Renatus. So obviously that wasn't my main source of income. I wanted it to be, but once I got into it, I realized it was very similar to my old sales job in that you don't make money unless you do a deal, right? And so I'm like, shoot, this is very similar, and I don't see how this is going to set me free financially. There's no wealth building here. There's no wealth creation, and like, they don't teach you how to invest the money once you have it as a real estate agent. And so I don't know how. I guess just networking and taking action on things. I think that's the biggest difference between my success and people that want to have success, is they're not taking enough action. And so I think action really brought me towards just getting better and better every year at what I was doing. And still to this day, I still rely on taking action. Just small things too, like things, just infinitesimal things you would think don't really matter. Like if I see a for rent sign somewhere, I'll call it right away. I don't save it and say I'll call it later. When I see it, I'll stop and I'll look at the sign and I'll put the numbers in my phone and dial it. Regardless of what's happening in my car, I'll stop everything, especially if I'm alone. That's the easiest thing. And if there's people in my car, I'm like, hey, I'm going to make a phone call real quick. And I pull over and I call the person. Like, little things like that, just taking immediate action, I believe, is a huge difference between people who are successfully doing entrepreneur style things and people who aren't.
That's wisdom right there. I actually had an experience yesterday that I had a little mind shift, and it just felt like it clicked. You ready for this? This is a good story. It's super simple, but I
Okay.
was thinking about procrastination and how often we say we're going to do something like, oh, I'm going to snap a picture of that rent sign, and then I will call that tomorrow or the next day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it never happens. It just gets buried, and you're like, oh yeah, 6 months ago I took a picture of this rent sign.
Yep.
I watched this video yesterday that was about procrastination. It's like 3-minute long video, and I was like, well, I'm going to do a video about that. I'll do it tomorrow. But guess what time it was? It was 11:59 p.m. last night. 1 minute passed, and I was like, all right, it's time to do that video now. And if you think about it, you're like, What if our I'll do it tomorrow was 1 minute away? Would we actually say we'll do it tomorrow? It's totally fine to say, you know what? I am not going to do this, or I am going to do this. But if you say you're going to do this, let's choose to do it. And if you say I'm not going to do it, say I'm not going to do that and give yourself that clear distinction. And when you're talking about procrastination and saying, you know what, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to pull over, snap a picture of that, and then I'm going to put it in my phone and call. That just reminded me of that experience last night.
Yeah,
So,
and don't get me wrong, I
yeah,
procrastinate like the rest of us,
all of us do, right? It's
right?
how.
But I just believe small things like that. I have something just in my brain constantly reminding me, like I just set that up. Little things like that, I just do them. I don't think about them, I just do them.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's the right attitude to have when you're talking about getting, generating, because I don't spend a lot of time banging the phones. I don't cold call, for my just so you know, for my short-term rental business that I have. Well, I do property management, but I specialize in short-term rentals, so Airbnb style properties. But I also have a couple long-term properties in my portfolio that I manage and whatever.
Mhm.
Anyways, when I started that and I still continue to run it, I've never done any marketing. I've never dropped a dime on any ads, nothing like that. It's all been networking, just positioning, just placing myself in these certain places, like networking opportunities and referrals from other people that I've worked with already, and just talking to people. A couple of them have come from Anonymous people that I'm friends with or that I've enrolled that want to learn. A couple of them have come from, another real estate agent that I became friends with, that does property management for a for a brokerage, and they don't do short-term rental stuff. But then a lot of them, it just kind of came from me just taking action, like I was saying, and just talking to this person, calling this sign that I saw on the side of the road, stuff like that. So it's all been very organic. Um, but imagine if you did that plus actual marketing for yourself, for your business. I think about it all the time. I'm like, should I drop some money on some like ads or something? Because my business could probably be booming and then I wouldn't know what to do. But at a point where I'm so comfortable with the business that I'm cool taking on, one at a time every few months.
Right.
One more and then one more, and then maybe I take on three or four and then I lose one for whatever reason, and then I get three or four more, and then it's just kind of like that.
Yeah, that referral type of business is so valuable. And I guess the thing that pops up with this is you go at the pace that you set. I mean, if you have a leader that is like pushing you and like you're attached to that leader, maybe you go a little bit faster. But
Mm-hmm.
you're as an entrepreneur, you're the one that sets the pace. And the people that are behind you that are following you, they're going to be at your pace or a little slower, right?
Yeah,
And if you want to go super fast, yeah, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you go with others. And I think that's something that you do really well is network. You create value for people, not just one time, but over and over and over. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I've got a property that you would be perfect to manage.
exactly. Yep.
I think
Just
that,
cultivating relationships is, I believe, the name of the game.
yeah. And that's a way to thrive as well, because if all we're doing is making money in business, then what's the purpose of the business? I mean, you establish that business so you can make money, but is it making a difference in your life and in the lives of others? Are you building positive relationships or is it negative? So how
Right.
have you been able to build those relationships consistently? Because I think this is a key element to thriving rather than just striving in business.
How have I built those relationships? I suppose it's a combination of a few things. Just understanding and being aware that I want to cultivate relationships in business and how important relationships in business are for the long run. Just like you said, I think just being aware of that and just having that at the top of my mind all the time is really important to have, when I'm going in talking to anybody, but also having conversations backed up by extreme specialized knowledge.
Mm.
That's awesome. I feel like it's crazy. I feel like I'm cheating when I'm talking to people because I've learned this incredible information from Renatus that nobody teaches. We don't learn throughout our lives unless you're seeking it out. And so when I can have a short conversation or a long conversation with someone about velocity banking, or like anything that's like accelerated mortgage pay down strategies like velocity banking, or anything real estate related, anything retirement account related, life insurance policy stuff, like a lot of most any kind of business related thing, for the most part, finance related thing. I have a lot of specialized knowledge because I've learned a lot from Renatus and what I've done out in the world. And so having these conversations with people within 5 minutes, maybe, or maybe less, I don't know, they know that I know a lot of what I'm talking about, and I just exude that knowledge. And I think that that makes people attracted to me in that way. And so they want to continue and cultivate relationships with me because they know that I have value.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's all personal development and learning, specific technical real estate strategies and finance strategies from Renatus's education. So for me, that's just that and reading books, personal development books. Between those two, I believe I've created I've made myself very valuable in a partner or in a networking, setting. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I believe that that's where it's at.
Yeah. And as you develop yourself that specialized knowledge, like what you said, you can start to look at problem solving in multiple aspects.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your value lies as well. As you have the fix and flip ideas, and you have the short-term rental ideas, and you have all these different elements that you have been able to cultivate, and you continue to study and understand, so that when a problem comes up, you're like, oh, I can look at this from 3 or 4 or 5 different angles, and we could solve this in multiple ways. Which way do you want to solve it?
Right.
That's
And more
free.
importantly, taking action on this stuff. I have a feeling that some people here are listening and thinking, oh, I've learned a bunch of stuff and I've been involved for a couple years and whatever, but I've never done anything. There's a disconnect there. There's what's happening? Why are you not taking action? Is it because there's a risk? Because there's always a risk.
Always.
Right? There's always a risk. The more knowledge you have, the less risk there is. You can mitigate that risk. But there's always going to be some risk. You got to take the plunge. I lost money on a deal. I did a deal once and I lost money on it. It was a terrible experience. However, it was a lesson. That's what life is. It's lessons. You got to make mistakes so you can learn from them. If you just never go out there and jump, you're just always going to be stuck in that knowledge on ice, lifestyle, which sounds horrible. I would never want to be there. So I'm always taking risks and action and, just making moves.
Yeah. I like this idea that when you go harder into your education, into your specialized knowledge, you start to think higher thoughts and do higher actions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you work smarter, that gives you the capacity to work harder. You don't have hey, I'm just going to work smarter or harder. The power's in the and. I'm going to work smarter so that I can do this.
Right.
Harder. I can work hard and smart. And I think that right there, that mentality is going to shift for a lot of people as soon as they realize if you spend enough time on yourself, understanding the things you need to be a little better human being, right? To improve your relationships, to improve your understanding of real estate, to understand business from multiple perspectives. You never are content with yourself. You can be content with the things you have, but you're never content with who you are. I love the constant never-ending improvement that Renatus keeps giving me, and people from Greg Kimball, he always brings that up, and having amazing examples like yourself in our community of people that are taking action consistently. I love that. So
I have something to admit.
Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
I've probably only consumed about 20% of Renatus education.
Yeah.
At most of what's available.
And you think about it, we've got 600 or so hours of education. So 200-ish hours would be my guess. That is what you're at, right?
Probably less, honestly.
Maybe even less. But you think about, it's not just what you consume as far as the information. It's what do you do with that information?
Implementation.
Implementation is the key, and who you surround yourself with. Because I know you've done a lot more than just show up to a meeting. You've showed up, you've talked to people, you've engaged, you've put in offers. The experience is not just in here's the education. here's the implementation. Here's other people that are implementing it, and you can learn from each other's experiences, and it's transferable. And
Right.
that's a huge value here. Me, I on the other hand, I've done 80% of all the education,
Wow.
which is a lot. But I'm one of those people that I love to just have the overarching idea and go at it from multiple perspectives. And I get so much value out of it. I'm never stopping to learn, or never stopping learning. I'm always going through it.
Uh,
But the key there is, what am I using, right? I've been able to use all those classes in different ways. I may maybe not do the entire strategy, but I find a piece here and a piece here that
mhm.
and I plug it in all these different ways. So for you, what has been the biggest lesson that you've learned from the challenges you've experienced? Like maybe,
Hmm.
man, I fell flat on my face. Like what's the biggest lesson you've learned that you had to pay full price for that we can get at a discount?
Hmm. Interesting. Um, let's see. Well, the first thing that popped up was make sure that you fully understand the paperwork.
Mm,
Um, the deal that I lost money on, I partnered with somebody instead of borrowing the money from him, luckily. And it would have went even worse if I just borrowed the money.
yeah,
And I also made sure that when we partnered, I had the authority so that I could make all the decisions.
yeah,
So I think a lot of errors can be um, you can avoid errors by making sure you understand the paperwork and the contracts and what different, what this contract says, what this joint venture agreement says, really flesh out, like make sure that you know what's going on and what you're doing and how you're setting things up. And if you don't know, you either need to learn, right? You need to get more education on it, or talk to somebody who knows. Talk to maybe somebody in Renatus or somebody who mentors you, or somebody who has that information, that experience, and can help you along those, avoid some of the pitfalls. Because there's so many people that I've seen over the years, and even some people in Renatus, it's not like it's impossible that people can be affected in Renatus, but I've seen people lend money to other people and lose it.
mm,
And that just breaks my heart. Like, that's terrible, and they don't get it back. And not everybody is as responsible as they may act when you first get into business with them, regardless of where they came from or where you met them. So I just think it's important to do proper due diligence and really know the contracts and the paperwork and what you're signing and what it means and what your position is in a partnership and what your responsibilities are. And, you know, that's that's what I would say is the biggest, like, just technical piece of information that I've learned by screwing it up.
yeah. I think if you can understand the paperwork, you have a lot more power.
Oh, yes.
So much more power, because what's cool about contract law is what's in the contract is the law a lot of times. So if you don't read the contract, you don't know what's in the law of your agreement. So that's great advice. And we have multiple classes that go through why that's so important. I mean, Nicole
Yeah.
calls about it in multiple ways. We
Mm-hmm.
have great lawyers that we can, instead of paying them $400+ an hour to explain these basic principles to us, we can go and watch these 8 or 12 hour classes and say, oh, wow, that is why we need to make sure that this lease agreement is in place. That's why we need to make sure that this Rep C is written the way that it is. So I have multiple escape clauses, and I know how to make sure my contract has teeth with consideration, or has a really easy way to get out of it if I want to assign it. Like, there's so many different things that puts the power in our possession if we understand it. But if we don't, then it's really risky, right? There's definitely more risk when you don't understand contracts. So that was a
Oh, yeah.
great piece of advice. Now, what has been, as far as the experiences you've had in real estate, what has been one of the most entertaining stories that you've experienced, or maybe one of the funniest things that's ever happened to you in a real estate deal? I would love to hear that side of real estate.
Funniest things?
What's something that's,
Uh,
oh, I can't believe this happened. Every short-term rental host has one. I know it. You got
Um, I don't know if I would say funny. I could share some scary stories.
okay. Hey, time
Um,
plus pain equals fun. So no, that's great.
okay, how about this?
Okay.
This was my first short-term rental that I had. It was in Lakewood, Colorado.
Okay.
Um, it's one of the few that I don't have anymore. Most
Mhm.
of them I've been able to maintain over the years. It was a side-by-side duplex. Um, it's kind of weird because even though it was side by side, it was really up down. So
Yeah.
like the left side of the house was a 3-2, the right side was a 3-1. Um, but you entered from the same level. But on
Oh,
the right side, when you entered, there was like a small living room and then stairs to go down to the basement. It was really strange.
mm,
But then the basement was a full apartment. Anyway, I had some guests. This was my first like I think I was 3 or 4 months into the business. So I was still very new figuring it out. This was a rental arbitrage. So I rented the house from the owner with permission to turn around and run it as an Airbnb, a short-term rental business.
mhm.
And so I had these people real sketchy. I didn't know at the time how sketchy they actually were, but there was a shooting. There was a shooting at the house.
Okay.
Um, so a bunch of crazy stuff happened. So the first thing happens, I get called at like 8 a.m. I'm still asleep. I wake up at 8 a.m. to this call from a no caller ID number, and I'm like, that's weird. And I don't answer, and then they call again, and I answer, and it's a police officer, and he's like, hey, I just wanted to update you. I found out that you're the host. You're the Airbnb host for this property. I'm over here at whatever the address was, and something strange is going on. I came over to this house because somebody called on a home invasion call, and this guy's telling me that's here that somebody tried to he opened the door at 6 a.m. to somebody knocking, and they tried to get into the house and cause trouble. It was really weird, and he was like, I think this guy's lying to me. And he also cut his foot, which is really bizarre, and his foot's bleeding all over the floor. There's blood all over the floor from this guy's foot. And what he said was, when these guys tried to home invasion, break into the house or whatever, when he opened the door, he escaped and ran out somehow, got out of the house and ran around the block in bare feet and cut his foot. That's what his story was. And the cop told me specifically, he was like, I that's the story, but I don't believe him. He seems sketchy. Something's going on with him. But I just wanted to update you. And I'm like, oh man, how much blood is there? What's going on? And he's like, oh, it's fine. It doesn't look like anything's damaged. There's just blood on the floor you're gonna have to clean up. And I'm like, okay, well, that's crazy. They were supposed to check out that day, right? That day at 11.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking, man, well, that's not too bad, I guess. The cleaner will just have to spend a little extra time cleaning it up, and if I have to pay her a little extra, that's fine. So I don't think much of it, and I go to a networking event that day for lunch, right around 11, actually. Turns out when I got out of the networking event, I had another missed call, and it was another police officer call. They left a voicemail, and it was like 12:30 maybe. And I called them back, and they said, hey, regarding what happened earlier, something else happened at like noon, like 30 minutes ago. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What now? What? They're like, there was a shooting at the house. I'm like, what is going on? And
God.
they go, yeah, there was a shooting, and the people that were staying at the house bugged out, got in their car, were being chased apparently by someone else. We think it's the same people they were talking about the home invasion. We don't really know, but they were being chased down the road. And luckily, I don't know who or how it happened, but someone called the cops again while this was all taking place, and they caught up to this car. Not the people chasing them, the people that were staying at my Airbnb. They were four of them, I believe, and the cops caught up to them, pulled them over, and they were all in custody
Mm.
for I don't even know what. He didn't explain. It was a detective that was talking to me this time. So he's like, yeah, you got to come over to the house, come check it out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so I decide, I'm like, well, I got to find out what's going on and get ahead of it. So I drive straight from my networking event. I was planning on just going home, and I drive because that place was set up automatically for the cleaner to come do her thing. Then the new guests come, it wasn't set up for me to constantly be there. Um, it was automated to a degree, but I decided to go over there. And when I got there, the whole corner of the house is on a corner, and the whole corner of that block was blocked off with tape, with, yeah, caution tape. And there was a squad car at one side, at one end, because it's on a corner, right? So the house is right on the corner, and this is the corner. There was a squad car here with the tape. There was a squad car here at the top with the tape. So regardless of how you were trying to get to the house from whatever street, you couldn't. So I stopped and I was like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "I'm sorry, there's an open investigation happening here at this property." And I'm like, I'm the host. I manage that house." And they were like, "Oh, well, we still can't let you in. You got to go around to the other side and talk to the detective that's at the other side, the other street." So I had to drive all the way around the block and talk to that guy instead of just walking, 50 feet across. And I did notice the door was open to the house, because I looked when I first stopped, and I looked over and I saw, and there was this giant dude, cop, standing in the doorway blocking anybody to come in. Yeah, because it was an open investigation. They were like,
Yeah.
"Nobody's coming in there, so we have to gather whatever evidence we have or whatever." I was like, "I don't know what's going on. Did somebody get killed? What's happening?" They were like, "Nobody got killed, but we believe somebody did get shot. There's blood all over the house, blah, blah, blah." Who knows if that was part of the tow thing or what? There was a lot of unanswered questions for me, but, they weren't willing to divulge everything, obviously. So I went and talked to the detective. He told me, enough information just to understand. And he said, "Look, sorry, but we can't let you in until our investigation's over." And I'm like, "Well, when's that going to be?" He's like, "End of day, maybe tomorrow. Give it 24 hours and come back, and it should be good. You can come back in the house." So I'm like, "Wow, okay, well, I guess there's nothing I can do right now." So I just had to wait. I contacted the owner and I told her what was going on, because I didn't own that house.
Mhm.
She was cool with everything, to be honest. I mean, she was kind of freaked out, but about there was a shooting there. But I told her it didn't look like there was any actual damage to the house. It looks like we were gonna have to pay extra for cleaning, and that was about it. And then the next day, I went over there, and there was a lot of blood, and I did have to pay the cleaner like 2 or 3 times what I normally would pay. And I never found out what happened to everyone. But there was a bloody blanket in the tub, in the bathtub.
Wow.
And there was a bullet hole through the living room floor, wood floor. It was very small. All you could see was like piece of wood kind of jutted up, right? So like the floor is like this normally, and there was like a little bit of a, like a
Lip.
splinter almost coming up out of the wood. And if you got close enough, you could see the little hole where it went through. And then if you went down in the basement, luckily I didn't have guests in the basement when that happened. But if you went down in the basement, the living room in the basement was underneath the living room in the upstairs floor, right? So all you had to do is look up, and you could see like a pretty good sized hole, because that was the exit hole,
Mhm.
in the drywall, just clean. And I never found the bullet. So not sure what happened to that. But there was a nice hole about that size, just black, just drywall hole coming out. And you're like, whoa. So that was pretty crazy. And that happened right around the same time that all kinds of bad stuff happened to that house. There was a flood in the basement. There was an electrical issue with the electrical box, and half the outlets stopped working. There was a whole mess of problems that ensued. So I ended up getting rid of that property because it just wasn't working, and the owner wasn't she wasn't good about like speedily helping me figure things out. That was her responsibility
Right.
as the homeowner. And so it affected my Airbnb business drastically. So I'm like, I have to get out of here, because this is just costing me money and reputation by keeping this place and trying to make it work. So I let it go. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. I have a few
It's a
stories
crazy
like
story,
that.
man.
Yeah.
You never know when you're gonna have a shooting in your place. I mean, that's a nuts thing. But
And it was wild. And I didn't even attempt to bring it up at that time. Airbnb's resolution center wasn't what it is today. It's fairly new. This wasn't like in 2018.
yeah,
And so I didn't even bother trying to bring it up through the resolution center on Airbnb, because I had a feeling it was just going to be a lot of back and forth, and they weren't going to do much to help. And so I just left it alone, and just the homeowner and I just kind of figured out what to do, and we were able to replace that one piece of wood, because it was a wood floor. And it wasn't, at the end of the day, it wasn't like a major multi-$1,000 repair process. It was a couple $100 extra to clean the blood, and then I don't know how much it set back the owner for that, but it wasn't much. It was a few $100 replacement. But yeah, pretty crazy. I've had some other interesting things happen. Maybe I'll tell you sometime.
yeah. Maybe.
That
Well,
one was the only PC one that I felt like I could tell on this.
oh, that's fair. you think about the challenges that we face in the moment, that probably felt like it was just overwhelming how much stress that caused.
Oh, it was terrible.
Looking back at it, you're like, oh, what was the actual situation? You're like,
Well, and one of the things I learned is how to better screen guests and get you know, um, follow your intuition, because
yeah,
I had a weird feeling about them when they first, but I didn't pursue it, and I just left it alone and figured it'd be fine like the rest of them, and stuff happens. But there's only so much you can avoid, right? The best thing you can do is do what you can to prevent things from happening and mitigate those types of things. But at the end of the day, stuff still comes through the cracks. Doesn't matter what you do.
or get shot through the floorboards right now. There you go.
Pretty
Now,
crazy.
in the last minute or so that we have together, tell me a little bit how people find you online. What are some of the ways that they can keep in contact with you?
um I don't have a big online presence these days. Pretty much since COVID, I kind of turtled.
Sure.
um Eve's asking how I screen my guests. It really depends on where they come from. If it's through Airbnb, there's not a lot you can do other than just how they speak to you. You can check out their reviews, their personal reviews as a guest on Airbnb. Um, if you have a weird feeling, sometimes I like to call them before they've even checked in. Just say, hey, can you call me? I want to go over the check-in process with you. Something along those lines, right? If they're not Airbnb guests, you can do background checks. I mean, there's tons of stuff you can do to prevent, or not prevent, I guess, but just to mitigate the risk, just to make sure you don't have sketchy people in your places.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you do have to just take a risk on someone, and you know, I guess it just depends. It's a case by case, thing. Um, Sorry, let me go back to what was I saying?
Oh, tell us how we get to know you a little bit
Oh
more.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not I mean, I have social media, but I don't use it much. I guess you can look me up on Facebook if you really want to. If we have a lot of mutual friends, Renatus people, then I'll probably add you.
sure.
Um and you can contact me there. I'm happy to answer questions or discuss, real estate deals or any type of business stuff or anything like that. I'm happy to discuss that. You can message me on Facebook, like Facebook Messenger. I'm happy to give my phone number out too.
Cool. Yeah, feel free to.
Yeah, it's 785-280-0857. Do you want to put it in the chat?
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
this group is trustworthy enough for me to leave my phone number like that. Nobody's gonna abuse it.
Go ahead. What was it one more time?
Seven
Hey,
eight
y'all,
five.
and for the record, my man Martin, this is Mike Word. When I first came to the community, Martin was one of the first people that greeted me and welcomed me into the community with open arms. So I love you, my bruh.
What's up, word?
Was
Oh,
cracking.
love you, Mike.
Great,
Good to see
great
you again.
interview. Brigham, you
Thanks.
the man.
Ooh,
Appreciate
man.
it. All right, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Yeah, put it in the chat. That would be great. I appreciate you, Mike. Thanks so much. Now, Martin, thank you so much for sharing your stories, sharing some insights. And honestly, what I love about this is you share a story and then there's a lesson attached to it. Like you were able to
Always.
recognize, how do I screen tenants? How do I make this be something that happened for me, not just to me? And I think we can learn from so many different people's experiences. We don't have to experience someone getting shot in our property to realize, oh, I need to be careful with with those feelings that I get, right? Those subconscious feelings of, man, is this something that I need to be aware of? Michael, you said Derek brought the fire also. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So good. Well, anyways, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being on today, Martin. And I loved hearing your stories, and we're gonna keep doing a lot of business together. I appreciate you. Have a
Can I
wonderful
can I leave one? Can I leave
leave
something?
leave with something. I want to hear a last little nugget.
Well, that's the thing. It's going to be reiteration.
Yeah.
If you take nothing else from this today, take more action.
Yes.
Take more action.
Hmm.
Do something. It's
Love
funny
it.
that I preach that, but I also don't work a ton. Um, I've been able to create this lifestyle over the years. I probably work 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
It's great, and so I have a lot of free time. But the time that I am putting in is highly valuable time, I believe, and it's mostly taking action.
Yes. That's so important. take massive action, take intentional action, be aligned, and focus on the things that are in your power. Because there are things that you brought up that maybe we can't screen guess perfectly, but we can get the gist by calling somebody up and talking to them about the check-in process, why they're arriving. And yeah, there's so many little tiny adjustments that as we take the action, we'll get more used to taking positive action. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, Brigham.
Absolutely. And thanks guys for being on today. Really appreciate you, our live guests on here as well. So like and subscribe. Guys, if you found this valuable, go and share it with more people. We want to get this message out there. I want to positively impact, inspire, and uplift others to have joy and reach their God-given potential as I reach mine. So God bless. Have a wonderful day. And we'll see you again next week.